Well, hello, everybody. We are back. It is Hammer Away. We are here on a Wednesday. That's like usual. But you know what? I took pity upon my guest today because he's over in the UK. And I thought, this 4 o'clock thing, that's another hour later, although I think he's probably kind of a night owl like myself. But that doesn't mean I need to push that on him. So, hey, we are here today with Mr. Toby Jepson, coming on to us all the way from the UK. What is up, my brother?
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
You're looking good to you.
Thank you. I'm looking to start getting back to my workout so I can drop some of this holiday weight.
What we call our winter coat in the UK.
That's right. I figure it keeps me a little extra warm. I don't have to worry about it.
Hey.
I do it for others.
Roll with it, mate. Roll with it.
But I am really, as always, honored to have you on the show, and very excited to be talking with you again. It's been a little while.
It has, and it's always great to come on the show, and I'm delighted to see that you're still rocking and rolling.
Absolutely.
We've got a lot to talk about, I guess.
We really do, and you know what? I'm going to do something crazy. And I just got off of work, so it's a hustle time to get home and get ready and do this today because that's what I wanted to do, right? But what I forgot was to bring my bag downstairs. So I'm going to see if my wife could bring that down to me.
Okay, this is a mysterious bag of tricks. So you got
it is. It's like got all my shit in it.
Oh my goodness me! Well, I sort of dread to think what's in it, to be honest. But I'll be very pleased for you to reveal it live on air. I think this is.
I don't think I ever want to hear it.
This is what the world public needs to see.
I don't ever think I want to hear a man say, "I want to see you pull it out."
Yeah, well, there is always that, but that's lost in translation.
Yeah, I had all my question stuff ready. Got a lightning round stuff ready to go. And Toby has done this with me before when I was doing this on the Go Game Go channel. But this is the premiere of Toby on Hammer Away on its own. And here is my gorgeous wife.
Fantastic.
Oh,
a round of applause. I think a round of applause.
Hello. She's brilliant.
Hi there.
Yeah. Let me not make you squish there. Hi.
Hi. It's so good to see you.
How you doing?
I am well.
We were
wine and everything.
He's got his wine.
Oh, because it's later. I am ready for that.
Well, listen, hey, it's we can do what we want. This is what it's all about.
Amen to that.
That's it.
Amen to that.
Just don't tell my boss.
Maybe later.
Yeah. Oh,
what?
Thank you. Oh, appreciate it.
Was that what you're asking? Always do that.
I was like, oh yeah, absolutely.
Nice shirt, by the way.
Good one. Good band.
See?
Yep.
One of the greats.
They are one of the greats. I follow you all the time on Instagram and everything you post. I'm like, I'm our generation. I hope that's not a bad thing.
These are people.
You are our people.
Let's just put it that way.
That's good. That's the right reaction. So that's
yep.
Thank you.
I love everything. Well,
appreciate it.
This guy.
Somebody's got to.
Right. Well, I will let you get to it.
All right. Thank you again.
Yes.
I love you.
Oh, nice to see you.
Hi guys. Good to see you.
So I just had something in my head and I can't think of it now. I mean, that's one thing I think that we found when I found you again after all those years. I was, I've talked about this before with you where it's like, I wonder where Toby is these days, and there was Facebook all those years ago. And I was like, oh, he's out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to chat him up. And then we started talking. And then I found out a little late about Wayward Sons. I found out right before your second record. So, so that's where I found out about that. And then there was still some Little Angels that I had to pick up still at that point. So,
yeah, it seems an awful long time ago, but the way I sort of look at it, I suppose the way I look at it these days is that, it's all building blocks in a life. It's building blocks in a career. And, and great thing about music, as we know, in any form of art, is that it's, you know, if you get it right, it should be timeless. It shouldn't actually have to have a date stamped on it. And
right.
you know, and some of the greatest artists of all time are making the best music they ever did in the latter years. You know, so there's a sort of, you know, for me, it's an ongoing journey, and I love it when you know, people find me all over the globe that either don't know who I am, or just discover the new music, or were an ex-Little Angels fan, or an old Little Angels fan, or, you know, all of this is great stuff, you know, because the music business is it's a very convoluted place, and also I think that the way that it's perceived by the general public, you know, is not what it really is. You know, for every Taylor Swift, there's 50,000 bands working hard on the road, you know, if not millions of bands working hard on the road to try and just eke a living, you know, and that's where most of the music business really sits, and that's where you're going to get the guts and the glory. You know, I'm not saying that Taylor Swift isn't important. Of course she is. She's an extremely significant character, and I've got a huge amount of admiration, but
Same.
of course, you know, the top of that tree is small. You know, there's only a very small amount of people that ever really achieve that level of success, and so there's all those people in the middle, people like me that have kind of had a career that's been, you know, I've been 35 years in this game now, you know, longer, slightly longer than that, and I still love it. I've had my ups and downs, but what I believe is that if you keep your integrity, you keep your authenticity, you can make music for all of your life, and it doesn't matter how old you are.
Yeah, and a lot of times we have to also understand it was unfortunate at times, as you've probably witnessed when did you watch the movie Hired Gun?
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
Oh, you need to check that out. It's really cool. It talks about different folks who have been in bands, mainly with bands. They kind of set up a few different scenarios. The one is Billy Joel's band. They concentrate on that quite a bit because it's Billy Joel. It's not Billy Joel's band. It's so you're a hired gun in that band, even though you've been there so long.
Yeah.
That when they're looking for marketing, who can you market? Then it's a different game.
Yeah, completely.
You know?
I mean, funny enough, I saw Billy Joel play at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
This time last year. Well, it was actually April. As you know, I went on a world tour with me and my wife took some time off and had a bit of a sabbatical, really, and went and did this big travel. And the last thing we did, we ended up in New York for a week for our wedding anniversary. And one of the things that we did, we were very fortunate to see Billy Joel. And I've always been a massive fan of his songwriting and his style. And went to see him play at Madison Square Garden in his run of shows that he's doing as almost like a residency. I think he's been a resident there for like 3 years or something, you know. But I got to say, you know, goodness me, what a stunning gig. I mean, I've seen some shows in my time, but he was absolutely peerless. And for a guy in his mid-70s, you know, and he had a cold that night, and he sang through it all. He was magnificent, and the band were amazing. It was just a real joy to watch, and I think to sort of see the kind of King of New York, if you like, in many ways, you know, the King of New York in terms of singer-songwriters perform in his home turf was something special. It really, really was. So yeah, I mean, I'll remember that show forever. But what came over about that, actually, what we're talking about authenticity, is that you know, he just came across as such an authentic character, and he was absolutely one of the people. You know, you really felt like you were in his gang. You know, it was that sort of thing. So I don't think Billy Joel really needs selling anything. You know what I mean? I think people know who he is, what he represents, how great songs are, and that's what matters, you know.
And you know, I kind of would you feel or think that same way? And then we'll get into lightning round. But do you feel that way based on what you just said? Would you think the same maybe of? And I know the careers are different, the music is different, but Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Sammy's a really good example of someone who's a lifer, you know, who's spent every ounce of his energies in creating Sammy Hagar as a character. And I think there's something very, very authentic about Sammy. I think he's I mean, let's be honest. I mean, goodness me, to come from where he did and to achieve what he did on Tro's onwards, obviously, then Van Halen. I mean, you say what you like about Van Halen, but I mean, I was, the thing is about me, I was a diehard Dave Lee Roth fan. I mean, for me, it was the first 7 albums, whatever, up to 1984, and I refused to accept that anyone else could ever fill those shoes. And Van Halen 1 is still the greatest debut rock album of all time, in my opinion. Etc. But I have to say, when I heard that first Sammy record when he joined Van Halen, it blew me away, because the guy brought something different to the party, and it re-enlivened the band. It's not the same band. Right, it's got a different flavor, but it was equally as tasty, but just in a different way. And so I was a kind of convert to Sammy. And of course, Little Angels toured with Van Halen in Europe in 1993, and I got to meet Sammy and sort of and hang out with the guys, and hang out with Eddie and everyone. And it was extraordinary to see how enlivened they were by the new move forward and how that all worked. And so, yeah, I think he's a real significant character and still remains. I mean, I can't believe how good he looks for his age. It's absolutely unbelievable. Talk about rock and roll keeping you young,
Yeah. I mean, just look at us.
Hey, rock and roll isn't supposed to be pretty.
No.
That's what I say. Okay.
No. Wait, are you saying I'm not pretty?
Well, I'm really referring to myself, Stephen. Stuart, rather.
Are you sure about that? I don't need you saying things like that to me.
No, man, it's all good. I've got the wine. That's why I'm getting names wrong. I'm winding down. This is great. What you see is what you get.
There you go. What a great song that is. What a great song that is.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they're both, they both grew up doing boxing. Yeah. Was something similar in the both of them. And when some of the things that you were saying, I'm like, that's kind of similar to Sammy, and they both kind of had a early thought of boxing careers.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was interesting. All right, here we go. Lightning round. Top 3 male or female front people.
Ooh, dead or alive?
Oh.
So what? No, I say, can I have
dead or alive? Dead or alive?
Well, it goes without saying for me that it's Freddie Mercury, without a doubt. It's very hard because I think there are so many, but Freddie Mercury for me typifies the gold standard of how to be a frontman in a rock and roll band. There's no two ways about it. Voice, performance, songwriting ability, everything. But just such a great, personable, and I'm such a fan. I would probably say David Bowie. I mean, even though David Bowie's a solo artist, I think, David Bowie has a personality. He's my favorite solo artist of all time. Right. I'm a massive fan of Bowie. On top of that, I would probably say Ronnie James Dio was a singer as a front, and especially when he was in Sabbath. I thought it was great in Dio, but I thought his fronting of Sabbath and taking on the mantle of changing Black Sabbath was such a remarkable thing to achieve. And he did that from sheer, unadulterated passion and drive and commitment to wanting to show himself to be the true great singer and great writer that he clearly was. And I think so. I think Ronnie's right up there. Elvis for me. I mean, I know I'm going beyond the 3 here, but Elvis Presley, without a doubt, I mean, absolutely unbelievable. And lots of great front ladies as well. I mean, Ella Fitzgerald's I'm a massive fan of Ella Fitzgerald. Obviously different thing, different era, but such a fantastic. I go for personalities, Stu. That's what I'm interested in. The personalities, the sheer quality of them as people, not just the music, but everything that they bring. So I could go on forever. I could talk about front people, and we would have a list of 40 people, and it would still
absolutely. I believe that. Maybe what we'll do, let's have you back on sometime soon. And we'll kind of maybe we could do a series of shows where we could chat about people who fronted bands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are such a load of significant. Yeah. I think especially now it's been thrown into sort of sharp relief because we are seeing an era now where so many of our heroes are passing away just purely because of the age group, And it's quite a shocking thing. I mean, I keep opening my Facebook every morning, and yet another classic legend has passed away. It's quite shocking. But of course, what do you expect? We are moving into that era now, and so it's but it sharpens their talent. When someone does pass, you go, okay. I mean, look at Wayne Kramer from MC5 a couple of days ago. Passed away, and I was a massive MC5 fan, and I kicked myself for not seeing the MC50 tour that he did when he came over a few years ago. But you sort of think of your heroes as being timeless, don't you? Having no
absolutely.
They're never going to die. They're always going to be here, and of course they are kind of always going to be here. But
absolutely. Look at you just mentioned Elvis. I mean, he's as prevalent today as as he was. Not in the same way, but in a different way. But still, right there, front and center. Your brain goes Elvis Presley.
Oh, without a doubt. And like, it's what's great about that is that his talent is undiminished. It's it's nothing to do with the style of recording. It's nothing to do with the time that those recordings were made. It is the sheer, unadulterated, pure quality that comes through every single time. You only have to listen to the early stuff that he did in the 50s when he was doing the Sun recording stuff and all that. It doesn't matter that he's throwing his microphone down to pick up the guitar player's guitar solo, and then pulls it back to sing, and it's a mono recording. Who cares? The quality is there, and you can hear it in every breath.
Yeah. Wow. I'm always like, oh, I've got a question about that. I'm not doing that. We'll talk about that when we have a chance to just do another show and chat about stuff.
Okay.
Because you and I have these brilliant chats. We've had long discussions in the past, and I'm like, that could have been a show right there. And not for not just for me to go, that could have been a show. It just because I think it was very interesting, and there'd be a lot of people out there having a take on what we talk about.
Oh, great. Well, I'm always here.
Yeah. Well, how about your 3, if you can do this? You might be able to. Somebody else has probably asked you this. I'm not the first person that knows you love Queen. Top 3 Queen tracks.
Oh, goodness me. Now you're asking. Well, I mean, the one
at least I said top 3. I mean,
I can't even top 3 doesn't even scratch the surface. But
there's one.
It's like, honestly, but I always go for "We Are the Champions" because that's the song that got me into rock and roll in many ways. I watched Freddie performed that on a TV program called Top of the Pops, which was the biggest sort of music program the UK had for many, many years. And I saw the band perform that when, probably I would have thought it was probably about 1978 or 9 when that record first came out. It turned my head. It was one of the key moments that made me think, even as a little boy, I would have only been, goodness me, I probably would have been 10 or 11, maybe 12.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh my goodness me, I want to do that. Who is this alien? Sort of thing. So We Are the Champions, because I think it kind of in many ways sums up exactly what Queen about, and sums up exactly what Freddie was all about. It was a kind of muted, I want to say the word arrogance because it isn't arrogant. It's a muted arrogance, but a really wonderful, confident song about how he believes, with his tongue firmly wedged in his cheek, what it's about to be in a band, to be a rock and roll star. And he's taking the mickey out of himself, but at the same time, he's asserting the very things that are necessary. And that I love that approach to how the lyric talks about sharing the space with the audience, how you in a band are sharing that time and that space with the audience, and how we're all one. That's what it comes across to me as. And that gives me so much joy when I listen to that song. So I always go back to We Are the Champions. And
it's almost like a wonderful page for you and I as performers. It's almost as if it's a part of a textbook where we're, we get a glimpse of and
I couldn't agree more. It's like it's the sort of, because you got to remember when that record came out, they were already into 6 or 7 albums by then. They'd had a long trawl through. They'd had the breakthrough with Night of the Opera. And
Yeah, 7. Yeah, it was their 7th, right?
yeah, so that breakthrough night at the opera, that they'd exploded onto the world stage, but yet they'd spent all that time touring with Mott the Hoople in the US, and trying to break through. Of course, Sheer Artstack comes along. I mean, I think Killer Queen would be in that top 3, because Killer Queen was the moment they decided to be a pop band, and they knew that to be a pop band they had to sort of leave their prog credentials behind. Off first and second record, of course. But I would probably go for something like, it's easy to go to say Bohemian Rhapsody, because I think that probably is one of the greatest songs ever written. But arguably, I think something like Brighton Rock is
nice,
a great example of early quality, where they weren't just trying to ape Led Zeppelin and Uriah Heep, which is what they were accused of at the time. They were stepping out on their own, and there's that great Brian May guitar riff, that amazing approach to how they can become something that people weren't expecting. So I think probably Brighton Rock's in there. But honestly, man, I could go on. We could have several programs about this. Absolutely,
which we can do that. You're always there, so we'll work that out. But no, those are great choices. I don't know that I've ever thought about. I know that I have thought about We Are the Champions in that way. I've listened to the lyric. I'm a lyric guy, so I love that. But at the same time, I don't know that I've ever really thought of it the way I even responded to what you said. I don't think I've ever thought about that until just now, which it's great. I love it.
My work here is done.
And good night, folks. So enjoy.
Yeah.
Let me see, what do we got next? Where have you never toured that's still on your list?
Very, very good question. Haven't done a lot of the Eastern Bloc, actually, what we would call the Eastern Blocs. I haven't played in Poland. I haven't played in Belarus, those kinds of places. And I think, obviously, because of the current situation in the Eastern Europe, it's not the, sadly not the safest of places at the moment. But I've always wanted to go there. Places like Transylvania and stuff like that. I've played in Bulgaria. I've played in Czechoslovakia. I've done various. I've touched upon it. I played in Eastern Germany, but never got really into those places. And the reason why I say I would love to do that is because so many of my friends, like obviously, as you know, I'm a big friend of Biff Byford's and the Saxon guys.
Yes,
whenever he comes back from one of their European tours, he always is extolling the virtues of playing in Poland and those kinds of places. So I feel that would be I'd love to go there. I haven't done hardly anything in South America. I've played. Well, I had a random gig where I went over with Dios Disciples to play in Brazil, and when we got there after 150,000 million hours of traveling on planes, the gig was cancelled. We had to go home again. So it was one of them. So I haven't really ever played in South America. I haven't played in South America. So South America's always been big on the list. South America, and I think some areas of the Eastern Bloc would be great. Yeah.
Now, isn't that where I think I was just watching another channel? It's a new channel. It's kind of one of what they call the VTubers, who are, they have the avatar animated thing and they did a great breakdown of the music from the Elder album and a big storyline behind all that. But then they were talking about Kiss playing in South America and how it didn't end up happening at one point, but then it was a big confidence thing to get down there and play because they loved it.
Yeah. No, I've heard so many great things. I'm still really good friends with Tim Ripper Owens, of course, and he plays down there a lot because, Priest were always a huge band down there, and he's picked up a great following down there. And he couldn't speak highly enough about it,
Wow.
So no, it would be that would be a joy. Whether it will ever happen, I do not know. I hope so.
We need to have a chat with Biff to have you guys on the road with them.
Well, there's always that. Of course, I think they've just come back from a big tour of South America, and they've had a real breakthrough. Goodness me. Talk about longevity.
No doubt.
Ridiculous. 74 years old Biff is now, and he's stronger than he's ever been. The guy's had quadruple heart bypass. You know, he's an absolute survivor. I mean, and they've just come back from their most successful South American tour. They're selling tickets like you wouldn't believe. The new album's gone in the top 10 in the UK album charts over here. They're doing so good, you know.
Man, and I think it's they've changed a little bit over. Or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. They have worked their music in certain directions throughout the years but never anything like bye everybody who loves us. We'll we'll maybe see you later. It's always been Saxon, and they keep the power and the glory. What can you say?
They do, and Biff's. I mean, I've yet to meet another character quite like Biff. I mean, he is the driving force in that band, and he's very much been a mentor for me, really, because he is still completely committed to the idea of being in a band, and he takes it very seriously. And all the music that he makes, he is passionate about. He doesn't do it just to, we've got to make another record. He loves making his records, and it stood the test of time. I mean, actually, the weirdest thing for me is that when I was a massive Saxon fan when I was a kid, they're one of the very first bands I ever bought a record of, and which was Wheels of Steel, and arguably they're cooler now than they've ever been.
Yeah.
Which is kind of completely mad, given the fact that they're all literally late 60s, early 70s, which is absolutely astonishing, you know?
Absolutely. And Nigel Glockler, have you heard the 6x6 stuff that he did with?
No, I haven't heard any of it yet, but I'm a good mates with Nigel, and he often sort of says, I've got some new stuff coming out, but he's yet to send me anything, so I haven't heard.
Yeah. I've got a copy of the first one. They're working on the second one. So Robert Barry, hopefully I'll be having Robert back on the show here real soon. And just a great, that's a great band, man. Ian Crichton. I mean, come on.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, and he's a lovely bloke, a great drummer. I mean, a fantastic player, you know.
Yeah. And also married to a relative of a friend of mine with whom I used to work.
Oh, right.
I was always telling her, when they come to town, you got to hook me up. So maybe while we're on here, I got to say, let's talk later about that. Then your favorite piece, because I know that you love this stuff, your favorite piece of Star Wars memorabilia.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know if you can see it. I can twist I don't know if you can see that in the window. But yeah. I've got the old attack over there. Look at on the window.
Sweet.
So I've got these are all like kids things. I mean, I've got bits. I've got the bits and pieces. I just got this for Christmas actually, which was bought by my daughter. Now I've got to be careful because this is Lego.
Oh yeah, man.
I've got a Darth Vader Star Destroyer there. Look, which is made out of Lego, and it took me about 3 hours to put it together. And it's so detailed, it's ridiculous. So I've got bits and pieces. I mean, I don't have lots of that. I mean, I've got Darth Vader's spare helmet above here. You know. So so yeah, no. Still,
I nicked it while I was going through the Death Star one day.
Well, exactly. I mean, one has to do these things.
I'm right. I mean, he doesn't need it now. He's dead.
How often do we get the opportunity?
We
don't want to, wouldn't it?
And personally, who wants Kylo Ren's helmet? I don't. What a whiny bitch. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. And God knows
my Lord. I used to work at the Disney store, and I went back with students years ago after they had purchased Marvel and Star Wars. So here I am in a room going, these are all of my favorite things: Marvel, Star Wars, and Disney. I'm sorry for what they did to Star Wars and Marvel, but this was early on. So the first of the movies was going to come out, and these two women, I have my long hair. I'm like walking around. I don't know. I am not a cast member. You can easily see this. But how did they know that I was a cast member years ago with my short hair, no beard, no mustache? Somehow they knew this. They walk up to me with a Kylo Ren phone case and a Stormtrooper phone case.
No way.
Which, excuse me. I'm like, yeah. Which one of these would you suggest? Why are you asking? It's for our nephew. I think he's like 15. I said, get the Stormtrooper. They're the first in and the last to leave. Yeah. And you don't know how this Kylo Ren's going to go. It may go badly for him. and he's going to be like, "Why did you get me this? You're making fun of me."
Oh no, stick. Listen, you got to stick to the foundations. Stick to the fact you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
Absolutely. Those stormtroopers, man, they kick ass. Just get that. That's fine.
That's right.
All right. So last lightning round question. Here we go. This one is about the band. We're going to get into the band here in just a second. So I just thought this would be a wonderful way for you to intro the band.
Okay.
What is a favorite characteristic about each of the Wayward members? And let's start with Nick Wastel.
Well, I mean, we sort of call him, he's a bit like Tigger, you know, because there's two distinct things about Nick that I always think about is that his unbridled energy, you know, how he moves around on stage as a man in his advancing years, which is just incredible. I mean, he absolutely never stands still, and he's fantastic performer.
Absolutely.
But he's also a really, really, really smart guy. I think Nick's been very pivotal. He's been pivotal in the kind of gentle persuasion. He's got that great art of gentle persuasion because he's a businessman, and he has to deal with people on a business level every day. So he knows how to gently persuade without it being a big deal, sort of thing. He's not a shouter. He's very calm and but always has a great positive slant on everything. So he's been a real asset, especially in recent months. And we'll probably get into this. You know, in recent months, he's been a very huge source of support for me personally. And so that's what I think about when I think of Nick.
Fantastic. What about Sam Wood?
Well, Sam's an anomaly. Sam is. I mean, Sam can do things with the guitar that I literally have never seen another guitar player ever do, including some of the real greats that I've toured with. Sam is an extraordinary talented young man with every reason to believe that he is in that top bracket, top flight of guitar players anywhere on the planet and of any generation. Mm-hmm. I find his abilities are just beyond belief. I mean, you know, and I see it every time. I mean, he's a sparky, positive, absolutely committed musician, and a great friend, and an entirely reliable human being. But you know, and all of those things together makes me bloody sick. How dare he be like that? It's just he's got too many good things about him. So you know, so I've got to knock him down a peg or two occasionally.
Why can't he be more like a prick like us? I don't.
How dare he? That's what I say.
Son of a bitch.
Exactly.
He is what I mean. All of you guys were great to meet up with. It wasn't like I didn't walk out. I walked out a little embarrassed when after a small little conversation thing with Phil one time because of something that I was thinking was going to be something funny and that he didn't get at all. So I was like, okay, no problem. But totally cool guys. So let's go to Phil.
Well, I mean, again, Phil is Phil's an interesting, I would say, very eccentric person, which has so many great things about it because you don't quite know what you're going to get with Phil sometimes on every level. So there's a kind of sense of he's a surprise and he's exciting to be around, but he's also very measured. I think the thing with Phil is that he knows exactly what he wants and what he wants to do and how good he is at things. And he's a very personable guy. You know, he's easy to talk to, and he's very much a kind of balancing factor in the band. You know, but we all think he's kind of crazy and in a beautiful way, you know. So he brings that sort of like interesting quirk to the band, which I think every band needs. You know, I mean, Phil. I mean, he's so reliable. Again, incredibly reliable, incredibly passionate, incredibly committed, and I couldn't want for anyone better to be in the band. I really couldn't. And he presents himself in a unique fashion, and I think that's what this business is all about. We're not supposed to be bland, you know, kind of beige people who wander around and no one knows who you are. You know, this is the whole reason why we pick up instruments in the first place is because all of us are a little bit quirky, all of us are a little bit crazy. That's the whole point, you know. So, and Phil is that sort of personifies that, you know. He's a wonderful person. Yeah,
He's kind of got that rock and roll class about him. You know what I'm saying?
Oh goodness me, yeah, absolutely. And he's so good looking. I hate him as much as I hate Sam for being as good on the guitar. So yeah.
And I meant to say one thing I would say about Sam, and again I would say it about all of you guys, but I mean Sam is that guy. He's that good soul. You know, he's that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you just, you know.
But he can rock and roll. I mean, the thing is about Sam, he's a bit of a dark horse. You know, when you get him on a stage and he plugs his, I mean, there isn't anything he doesn't know about the guitar and amplifiers. You know, when he plugs that Les Paul in, you know, stand back. You know, just let him get on with it. He turns that thing into something that's otherworldly. I mean, I sometimes stand on stage just watching him, you know, and he's playing solos and he's just playing his thing and he's just going off on one. It's just like, that's what it's all about. You know, it's about that unbridled release, you know, that sort of thing. You can't put your finger on why we all like it, but we just do, you know. He's got it in spades, you know.
Yeah. It's that you shrieve yourself of not everything, but you shrieve yourself of that everyday thing when you get out there on that stage and just tear it up, you know. I love those kind of gigs. People respond and it's easy to continue to go all night long.
That's right.
So for me, it's kind of like where to begin, but before we dive into the tour recap, I kind of want to start there. But what's the very latest on our Wayward Son, Dave Kemp?
Dave's good. Dave's been very poorly. I mean, those that are interested in the band, you know, and know of Dave's involvement will know that he played on all of the studio albums, but he had to bow out, and that was to do with health issues. He got Meniere's disease, which is a balance problem, you know, which is caused by and can be accompanied by severe tinnitus. I noticed that Huey Lewis has been in the press recently talking about his struggles with exactly the same problem. And so it became a medical issue for Dave. He couldn't tour anymore for a long time. He had to go under supervision and get himself looked at. And I'm glad to say that aspect of his life has improved massively. He's now got hearing aids and things which have really reduced the problem, and he's kind of back on track. But he's also had a few other sort of quite severe medical issues, and he was very poorly just before Christmas. I was very worried about him, but thankfully he's on the mend, and he's looking good. He's lost a lot of weight, and he's starting to get himself back. And we are, in fact, me and him going out as a duo, as a kind of, because I do a lot of acoustic touring in the UK. Right. So I'm going out on a quite an extensive acoustic tour in May and June this year, and part of the reason why I'm doing it is to give Dave some rejuvenation. So Dave's coming out with me on that tour, and we're only doing small venues, but it'll get him back on the horse, and I couldn't be more delighted. You know?
I tell you what, I can't be any more happy about to hear some of that, because being over here, not having, I probably could have written some notes over and messaging and everything like that, but I am glad to hear that, because I know you guys have a massive love between you guys, a great brotherhood there, and when your brothers aren't doing well like that, especially when you both have something in common like music, it's tough.
Oh, it really is. And again, you can't underestimate the aging process. I mean, what we're going through, I'm 57 this year, and I still feel great. I still got plenty of energy. I still feel just as ambitious, and I think Dave does too. But life catches up with you, and I think you've got to. Sometimes what these are little wake up calls and little moments in your life where you have to take stock, and you look at what's going on, and you decide what's important. And I think I've had a very, very strong, very close relationship with Dave as a co-writing partner, as a co-musician. And the last thing I would want to see is Dave suffering in any way, shape, or form. He is. I love him. He's one of the closest things I've got to a real brother, and he's a joy to be around. And he's also, more than anything else, I mean, apart from all that great stuff, he is supremely talented. I mean,
yes,
honestly, I mean, and he's one of these really. Again, I hate him, the bastard. He can play anything, and the thing is, he's that he is on the cusp of genius. I know, geniality and genius is always bandied around. It's kind of like, apparently going to pick up a pizza these days is genius, but it really isn't. But Dave really does occupy that place. And I always think that the definition of genius is someone who can do something really easy and doesn't understand themselves how they can do it.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what he is. I mean, when you question Dave about his abilities, he always goes, "No, I'm not very good at that. I'm just busking it, man. Oh, people always say I'm great at stuff, but I'm not very good." But he really is.
He is a great talent and played. We may talk a little bit about that, but I'll just let everybody know that Toby and Dave have been working together since back in the '90s when they were doing Little Angels. Especially on the Young Gods album when they were doing a lot more of the horn sections and things like that.
That's it, yeah.
So if you haven't checked that out. Favorite Star Wars memorabilia, says Lance. It ain't Kylo Ren or Rise of Skywalker. That's a big thing for me. I've never seen Rise of Skywalker, and I never will as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my goodness me, you are partisan. I can't believe it. Won't even look at it. No, well, no. I mean, hey, fair enough. I mean, listen, I'm a New Hope guy all the way. I mean, I'm still think that's the greatest of all the films. I love Empire, but I love original stuff. I like the original, the roots, the grounding, and I still watch A New Hope and still see something new every time I watch it. It is indescribably good.
Yes, it's that thing that reached in and grabbed your heart and was like, whoa, you're like, no, this is a Western in space. When we were our age, when we saw that,
it changed our generation, didn't it? It changed our generation, and it was one of the very few films that genuinely can be regarded as something that culturally improved human life on a massive scale, because it was so positive, and it wasn't mawkish. It didn't have that kind of horribly syrupy moral code. It had a simple story about evil versus good, and didn't need to ram it down your throat. It was just fantastically well conceived and beautifully made, and it's very, very hard to beat.
I liked that they put the and again, we'll discuss this another time too. We could just have a Star Wars discussion, but I also liked the fact there was two things about it. First of all, when the Force started, anybody could do that. It was what you tapped into, right?
Yeah.
But when that got left behind, that bothered me. But the other thing about it was it was a choice. It was good and evil, and that's a choice. Yeah. It's not a, you know what? You're born evil, you're born good. It was you're born, and you have good or bad.
Yeah.
You can choose, and you can also stand by the consequences you're going to face because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it didn't. I just loved it was so wrapped up in so many great things. The kind of daring do of it, the kind of swashbuckling B-movie sort of like sort of Saturday morning picture special feel about it. There was so many great things about it that just didn't need to be overly explained. Wasn't overly.
Exactly.
But the great thing about the 1970s filmmaking was moralizing that sadly has become a huge part of filmmaking, especially the kids filmmaking. It wasn't like that before. People were I think the audience were considered to be a little bit more intelligent than perhaps we are now, in certain quarters. And I think that's what's great about that film is it's at no point does it treat you like an idiot.
Right. Thank you. Right. Which they seem to know how to pour that all over every script these days. You're like, oh, that was a great movie. Seriously, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
Bar humbug.
I say that so often. I'm just like, I'm glad you liked it. Good. I'm glad you liked it. Because I won't touch it, hated it, whatever it is, people have heard me bitch about that enough that I won't even go any further with that. So what is Wayward Sons? I missed the beginning when Ghosts Have Yet to Come came out in 2017. I missed that, and it was right before in 2019 when The Truth Ain't What It Used to Be was getting ready to come out. That that I got in, and you started understanding what a super fan I was of the band and of yours. And so what I'm dying to know, because how long it's been since we talked, is what is the latest for Wayward Sons?
Okay, well, goodness me, it's been a very interesting and quite dramatic story in lots of ways. I mean, just I suppose just to praise it a little bit, just like so many bands and so many artists, we suffered badly through the pandemic. It came at exactly the wrong time because we were on our second record, as you know. We were on that Steel Panther tour. I was very poorly, and I was losing my voice quite a lot, and I didn't know that essentially what I had long COVID. I had COVID, but of course by this point nobody knew what it was. But that's since been sort of found that that's exactly what was happening to me, because it was respiratory and all the rest of it. So we went into the pandemic with a live album, with a live active record, the second studio record, that came to a resounding stop. And we had no choice but to make the third album, because we had nothing else we could do. We had some, fortunately, because I'd written so many songs, we'd gone into that second record with loads and loads of leftover material that was just as good as the stuff that was on the album. But we didn't know what to do with it, and we just thought we'd leave it on the hard drives. So the one thing was, I could sit in this little studio of mine, and I could edit stuff, and I could work on things. And eventually we made the third album. And again, we suffered from that, because that record came out at the tail end of the pandemic, when people were still really nervous about going out and seeing gigs. The record label had kind of lost a bit of heart, because they'd lost a lot of money and on lots of things, because obviously they ground to a halt as well.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a perfect storm,
Yeah.
And it really got to me, and it became, I'm sad to say, a sort of sense of futility. And it felt, we went out and did a short tour in the UK tentatively, and we were only 2 gigs in, and poor old Nick got COVID and was really, really ill. We had to cancel the shows, so it was like we were stopping, and it takes its toll on you emotionally, and it becomes a kind of battle that you feel embattled. And I sadly, I felt very encumbered by this situation, and I also felt I was letting everybody down. I felt that the fans weren't being dealt with correctly by the label and by the situation. And so I sort of called time on it. I sort of said to the guys, look, I cannot go through this situation again. I cannot spend another year of my life writing this amount of material for it to come out and fall on stony ears, apart from, obviously my lovely hardcore fans. But what we're trying to do is get further out. We're trying to do more. We needed to go and tour that record. We hadn't been able to tour The Truth Ain't What It Used to Be. No one's heard those songs really, live. And so it was a really difficult thing. And so, I sort of had to take a step back. And so I sort of said to the guys, look, I need to take some time off. I don't know what we're going to do next, because I can't face the possibility of yet another record just disappearing into the ether, because we don't have a strong record label, and we don't have possibility to properly tour it. So it was quite a moment, Stuart, I've got to say, and so I needed to take that breath. And what happened is that, me and my wife went on our 6-month sabbatical, and it was designed for both of us to sort of really reconnect with each other. Because I sort of realized one day that I hadn't really put my head up since about 2002. And here we were in 2022, 20 years later, and I had done nothing but work on music, nothing but try and find my way through the maze that is the music industry, that is changing on a daily basis, that's mercurial, that is hard to grasp, and because of all the changes that we know digitally and all the rest of it. So I hadn't really put my head up for 20 years. And in that interim period, we'd had children, and so I sort of needed to take a breath. And so we went and did our 6-month trip, and it was such an enlightenment, such an incredible journey, that when I came back from it, I was a lot more informed. I felt a lot more mentally aware. I felt a lot of the fog had cleared. I'd been going through a bit, and I don't mind telling people, and I think I'm a massive advocate for it, but I went through quite a bit of psychotherapy for a number of things that were long term and deeply seated in me as a person, and to try and tackle those things. And I'm a real big advocate of talking therapy. It really helped me, and all of these things combined, ended up in a situation where I felt, okay, look, let's have a look at what we've got here. Let's have a look at what we need to do, and let's take tiny steps forward. Because what I tend to do, Stuart, is I tend to, as you can probably imagine with me, you do know me, I take massive strides, and I'm ambitious, and I think everything. I don't mind tackling a mountain with a toothpick. I'm that kind of guy. So
which I do have to say served you pretty damn well, getting through that COVID time.
Absolutely, and because we had no choice. I mean, when you're sat there facing the possibility of who knows what, because no one's telling us anything.
Right.
We're literally going, well,
your brilliant wife was right there along with you the whole time,
without a doubt. And you realize how important family is and how important relationships are. And so all these things fed into this kind of concept of, well, okay, what do we do next? And so I sort of reached a point where, and I'd taken on a new manager who's an English guy who lives in LA. And whilst I was in California last year, I sort of had long chats with him, and we kind of formed a bit of a plan.
Cool.
And that kind of, the wheels came off that a little bit, and there was all sorts of stuff, and I sort of felt a bit sort of in a quandary really. But when we got back to the UK, I sort of thought to myself, okay, I'm not going to consider making another Wayward Sons record. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the guys, and we'll go and do some shows, and we'll just test the water, because that's the thing that matters, is that I need to know that the audience is still there. I need to know that we haven't made a mistake, and things are still okay. And even if it means rebuilding, even if it means relooking, even if it means changing everything, how do we do that? I wanted to feel confident about that, and I wanted to feel that good and joyful about it, because I've got to be honest with you, the period through the last two records, because of the pandemic and because of everything everyone experienced, it wasn't joyful. It was difficult. And I know that everyone feels that, and I'm not the only person, of course, but I can only look at it from my own perspective.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, it was no longer a joy to think about being on the road with a band. It was no longer a joy to think about playing live, because it just felt so difficult. And so I needed to get that out of my system. And I've got to say that where we are now is so much better. We're looking at completely restructuring the recording situation. We've got the manager that I'm talking about. He's fully managing the band. We're now looking at more dates at the end of the year, and then making a new record in 2025.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. That's great. Because it's I am just have been thrilled and just really excited time after time about how each album is, and how much I love it, and how much is there. Then sometimes when I'm like, you're like, are you going to like this next one? You like this one? We all tend to, in our chair as we sit here, and you go, here, this is what I did this time. And it's almost like somebody who presents food to somebody. Here you, is this as good as what because it's not exactly the same. I did this with it. And you're like, yeah, it seems different. And then you're like, but damn, it's delicious. So that's kind of the way I felt about the records. Sometimes it took me a minute, just because I was so married to what came before. We've all done this over the years.
Oh,
and then
it's inevitable.
And then you get in and you're like, oh.
And it's evolution. You've got to be very careful about making records. I mean, I've made a lot of records in my life, as an artist, and as well as a sort of record producer. And I've seen it from both sides of the glass. And I look at it from, I suppose I look at it from exactly the same perspective, really, that the only thing that matters is the songs. I think we've talked about this before. The only thing that I care about is the music, and how you present that music, and specifically the songwriting, because that's the only chance you've got, And so I center all of my efforts when I'm making my own music, whether it's with Wayward Sons, whether it was with Little Angels, whether it's solo stuff, I center it all on what the capacity of the songwriting contains, what it is, or how it presents itself, and then we clothe it in the things that we want it to be clothed in, and that can sometimes be very unexpected.
Gotcha.
I think the third album is a good example. Even up the score, for me, it's the most confident record we've made, and there's no surprise to me why that is. Is because we'd made 2 albums before, we'd learned as we'd gone along. Yes, we were under the pressure of the pandemic and things changed, and that changed the way that I looked at it slightly, but it also fed into it as well, because I think the responsibility of a songwriter is to report on the world around you, and no holds barred. That's what it's about, as far as I'm concerned. You talk about your own perspective.
Yeah, and I think I've said it a million times, and I think this is one of there's certain bands you can say this about, and other bands that maybe not so much, but this is definitely a band that if you start on this new record or the latest record, if you start on that one and you're like, oh, they've got more stuff, you're like, yep, two before this. Well, now that you've got the technically 4 records, but you get back to that first one, you're like, well, shit, this is okay. And then you get to that second one, whatever order you go, you're not gonna, my line usually is, there's not a clunker in the bunch, but there really isn't. There's a great feel. You can go back to the beginning and work your way through. You can start at the end and work your way back. It's a great journey. In my opinion, I think it's a brilliant way to go. And that goes all the way to the packaging.
Well, thank you, mate. I mean, that's a massive compliment. And, I think any band, any songwriter, these are the dreams, this is what we want to do. I don't sit around when I'm writing songs trying to write for anyone apart from myself, because that's the only thing you can do. You have to be very selfish, and it's an incredibly intense, selfish thing. And the big challenge is then taking those selfish moments of what I would consider to be sort of hopefully pure moments of you, and putting them into some sort of format that everyone else can then enjoy. And that's the acid test. But it's such an incredible journey to go through, and it's an incredible thing to go through. And because I've made so many records, I've sharpened the process. I know when I've written a clunker. That's why I don't put them on the records. I mean, believe me, there's plenty of clunkers, man, sat around on tapes and on hard drives that I'm still going, well, I wonder if that one could make it. And I sort of then listen to it again, and I'm like, no, nobody wants to hear my jazz odyssey. I mean, or my sort of country and western special, it's not gonna. No one's. Believe me, it's a non-starter. So I've kind of learned over the years when to spot the runts of the litter, and sort of carefully and very gently put them down. And then
there's no Toby Jepson Saucy Jack.
I'm not saying there isn't, Stuart, but
if you wrote a concept record, what do you think you might center it on?
Oh, mate, it'd definitely be a mashup between the witch hunts of the UK. Well, the witch hunts of the UK, the musical. So that I think, can you imagine it? There'll be the main protagonist will be in a ducking stool, sort of having bread chucked at him and all that. So it'd be something like that. I think that's how I'd center on it. It'd be something quite dark with stupid comedy, but I don't know. I mean,
all I can see is you walking into the next meeting with the band and go, "Wait a minute, all right, I've got this thing.
Yeah, I've got it. Hold on.
It's going to be called Music from the Witches."
Exactly right. Which
I could just see Phil just throw sticks down and walk out.
It's got a kind of ring to it. I mean, let's not dismiss it. Let's not. Anyway,
we're making it a joke here, so nobody else does it until you do. Who the hell would do that? I think we got it. We're good. We're good.
Right, yeah.
No.
Listen, I do think the daft thing. Joking aside, I think one of the kind of crazy parts of being a songwriter, and I am pretty prolific. When I get going, I don't stop. And so, but one of the crazy things about it is how the there definitely is people out there that would write something like The Producers or sort of the Saucy Jack thing and actually go, actually, that's not a bad idea, because that's part of the thing. It's like turning on. I remember someone said in an interview recently, which I thought was a brilliant analogy, is that being a songwriter is a bit like turning on a tap, and what you get is like you get the rusty water coming through first. It's all glugging and farting and going on, and it takes
the pipes.
Yeah, and it takes a while for that water to run pure and clean.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens when you work on a project. Is you set off with all these wild ideas, and really what it is, it then filters down. And then you start to understand where the trail goes, and then you follow the right trail. But it doesn't mean to say you haven't written a load of absolute nonsense that you convince yourself for several days that it's going to be amazing, you know. But that's the journey. And so the task is to figure out the wheat from the chaff. It really is figure out what's good and what isn't, you know.
Absolutely. So if I was to, let's just say, kind of work backwards a little bit. So a little bit like Memento. Did you like that movie?
I did.
I love that movie. I was watching it again recently.
I haven't worked out what the hell it's about, but I love it. You
know? I'm still trying to figure it out.
Exactly, right?
I've seen it 5 times.
Yeah.
So you wrapped up a 5-date headline tour, and you took Muddy Brook on the road that ended on January 20th.
Yeah.
First, I just wanted to see if you could just tell us a little bit about Muddy Brook.
Oh, great!
From your perspective.
Great band, yeah. I mean, I've sort of been aware of them for a couple of years. I mean, the guy who does my PR stuff, he's been handling their PR stuff, and he's mentioned them to me a couple of times. And I'd listened to a couple of bits of pieces online, and I thought, oh yeah, this is really cool. And so when we were looking for an opening act, I just, I'm not interested in giving people legs up for a leg ups for the sake of it. You know, for me, it's got to be because I really like it, and because I think there is a bit of a thing over here in the UK, because there's a lot of bands play, and there's this, there's the movement at the moment is the new wave of classic British rock, which I have no idea what that means. I really don't. I don't like labels and all this stuff. But there's this sort of seemingly unwritten rule that they all support each other, and then that's great. I get that. I've got no problem if guys. But for me, I'm old school. I've got to really like the band who are opening for me, and I just thought that they had a real pizzazz. I thought they have. That's an old word, isn't it, pizzazz? But I thought they were just really cool. I thought there's 2 girls in the band, fantastic singer who plays guitar. And the bass player, Anna, she's fantastic too. And they've got a guy drummer, and they're just a quirky, kick-ass, dynamic 3-piece. I love 3 pieces anyway. I love 3-piece rock and roll. Yeah. And I just think that there's something interesting about what they do. And it's nothing to do with the fact there's 2 girls in the band. That's a complete red herring. They're just great writers. There's some really great ideas. They can really play the hell out of it, but they do bring an interesting modern perspective, because Harriet, who's the main songwriter and the singer, she's coming at it from an entirely different perspective because she's a woman, and so she's looking at the world. And we need more of it. We need more. We need less sausage rock, and we need more female rock, in my opinion, because you get a different perspective, fantastically different perspective, which is really nuanced and clever, and because the world is dominated by men in rock and roll, I think it's sad, because judging by what Harriet is able to do and what she's doing with her music, it's fantastically potent. I think they've really got a shot, and I think they, with time, I mean, they're not there yet, but with time, with another album, with another couple of tours, with another couple of years under their belt, if they stay the distance, they really could do it. I think they could be a big band.
Well, I'll have to keep in touch with you about them and see if I can get them on the show.
Oh, they're great. You'd love them. Harriet's
we have a band here that's kind of that same build. It's called The Rumors, and they're out of just here in the Midwest, but up north of here. And I'll have to turn you on to them and see what you think of that.
Cool. Check it. Check a link my way.
Yeah. Because there are so many, and I've said this a million times. This is one of those things on the show. I'm get concerned of people like, shut up. You've said this enough. I was really proud of Scorpions for taking Thunder Mother out.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard them, but
oh yeah, I mean, I know the guy that oh god, I know him so well. I've forgotten his name. I know that one of the chaps that's involved with their production.
very good.
He's the guitar player, Swedish, Norwegian lad, I think he is. They're Norwegian, I think, aren't they? Or Swedish, Norwegian, I think. And yeah, fantastic. You know, I you know, really great. You know, there's. I think at the end of the day, man, it just seems so crazy to me that as soon as you get women fronting a band, that everyone sort of goes, "Oh my god, it's so different." Why are we even having this conversation?
Thank you.
It should just be about the music. You know?
Thank you. A couple of years ago, they had a Super Bowl, and they had the first female official on the field, and they had to make note of that. I'm like, okay, you do realize in making note of this, everybody understands what a fucking twat you are for not doing it before this, that we have to talk about it.
I know.
We shouldn't have to talk about it. It should just be somebody on the field. And if a woman has an interest in that, if a man has an interest in doing that as a job, that's what you do.
And if they're good enough, I mean, at the end of the day, if they can do the job and it doesn't matter who it is, and they're talented and they can pull it off, then that's what
exactly. It pissed me off that they had to make a report about it. I'm like, oh god,
it is absolutely nuts. I do not get it at all. You know,
no.
And you know, and we know I've always in my life, because I've got 3 daughters, as you know.
Yeah.
You know, I know the struggles that they've been through, and still continue to go through as young women. And you know, taking someone like Muddy Brook on the road, I treated them exactly the same as anyone else. You know, it's a reality is that's your dressing room. This is what you're allowed to do. These are what you were welcome. You know, as long as you're willing to fit in and we're willing to work together on this, you know, no special consideration given. You just, if you're here to do the job, do the job.
Yep.
And that's it.
I'm with you, man. Because that's just, you know, we're just people. Just be people.
Exactly.
On that tour, let's see, you played Bristol, Huddersfield, Newcastle, and Nottingham and Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
Is there any of those that you have any quick anecdotes about any of those shows? I mean, when I think about my time that I spent with you guys in Europe and in the UK, I have my own little things, but I'll talk about those another time. But is there anything that happened in any of those that was particularly like, oh shit, yeah, I should tell you about that, or I shouldn't tell you about that?
Well, no, well, I mean, I think because we had the layoff for getting on for 18 months. I mean, the last show that we did in the UK was we played a little place in Bradford, which wasn't really a great gig, and I wasn't feeling up to my best. And we just played, you know, emotionally I wasn't really, but we just opened the main stage at Download a few weeks before, and so that was like really, in many ways, I regard that as the final show that we did before we had our layoff, you know, because that was tremendous. We had such a great time on that gig, and of course it's Download, so you know you've got this 60,000 people watching you, you know, something. It was ridiculous, you know, and we went down great, so it was a real shot in the arm. But I think the thing I would remember about this last set of shows is that I actually, for the very first time in a long time, felt very nervous, and I don't normally get nervous before a gig because I'd spent, you know, I'd had a lot, like I say, a lot of emotional and mental battles to overcome, and so I was kind of, I felt sort of tentative about it, really. And I can remember sat, you know, backstage before the Bristol show, thinking to myself, I literally thought this: I just want to go and get this over and done with. I just want to do the gig. I want to go home. But the moment I stepped out on the stage, and it was pretty much sold out, I think we were only a few tickets away from selling out, and it was a freezing cold January day. You couldn't make it up. You know, we had a cold snap like we haven't had for years over here for about 2 weeks, and we were touring through those 2 weeks. It was ridiculous, right? So I was surprised anyone turned out to see us play, frankly, because it was freezing, and the venue is on a boat. Can you believe it's a converted boat in the Bristol Channel? Famous gig. I mean,
so it's freezing cold. Let me find what might be the coldest place in the
even colder, right? So it's
winds coming off the water.
It's well, we were in. It's in the hull, so it's sat. It's
correct.
It's venue in the hull, but
correct.
It's still it's steel, so the whole place is just like it's freezing, you know. So we did this, but the moment I stepped out on the stage, it just lit up. The place just went nuts. And the most astounding thing was, it wasn't just a lot of old middle-aged people like me in the audience, a lot of youngsters.
Wow.
I was actually really surprised. You know, there was people wearing Little Angels t-shirts and but all kid, 20-year-olds, some even younger. Same thing happened through the entire tour. If I'll bring anything away from that tour was, I mean, I can remember we were playing KK Steel Mill, which was probably the best gig of the tour, the last one of the tour.
Okay.
And it's a lovely venue. It's like a big old warehouse, but they've set it up like an arena, so you feel like you're playing a big gig. But they've got it so well organized that you can curtain it down, and I think we had 500 plus people in it. It wasn't huge, but it makes you feel like you're in this massive gig, And I can remember I walked out onto the stage and looked into the front few rows, and there was a kid who couldn't have been older than 18, 19 years old, wearing a Little Angels Jam t-shirt.
Oh wow!
He was in raptures, punching the air, and I kept pointing him out, and he was like, it was just ridiculous. I thought this hasn't happened to me for decades, where I can look into an audience and see young people that clearly have found the music of their own in-depth. They've found it in their own time. Mm-hmm. They love what we're doing, and they're here because they want to be here. It's not just a bunch of my old fans that have traveled around with me forever type of thing. There is definitely So I took away from the tour a real sense of optimism about the future, and it really compelled me to sit the band down the next day and say, look, okay, this has been unexpectedly great. I mean that with the greatest respect to everything.
Correct.
I didn't know what to expect. It's January, it's cold, we haven't played for 18 months, but it was unbelievable. The reception was fantastic across the board, and I said, look, okay, I'm in. Let's make another record. Let's make some more plans.
I'm hooked. I'm in. That's great. And especially when it's, for the rest of the band, especially when it's you that feels that way, rejuvenated, re-energized, positive, and passionate. You're like, these are the things you want from your writer, your front man, the lead guy from the band. You want them to have that confidence.
Yeah, and absolutely, and it's always been a very respectful relationship in Wayward Sons. The guys know why they're there, and I know that I can't do without them, and so there's a real sense of healthy respect. They respect my position, and I massively respect what they bring to the project, and it's we do feel very honored to be on a stage with each other. It's a really lovely feeling, and never more so than this last 5 shows. It was a rejuvenation. It was a really special tour, and probably the best tour that we've ever done. And arguably, the Bristol show and the KK show, the Wolverhampton show, the first and the last show of the tour, were 2 of the best shows I think I've ever experienced in my life and career as a musician.
Wow. Now, the Bristol show was not at the same place where I saw you with Steel Panther, was it?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't recognize the name. I just
no. That was the Academy, which is
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was a great show. I mean, doing that, seeing Steel Panther, that's a whole other conversation. It's like my wife, she still can't get into it, and I go, I get it. I couldn't either until I saw them live, and then
with those guys, you just have to take the joke.
Yes, and you can't take it until you experience it.
No, and also that what you realize when you see them live is that they're taking the rise out of it all. There's not clearly nothing serious about it,
right.
And they are poking fun at the traditional tropes and stupidity of hair rock and what rock and roll meant when we were all dumb and stupid, like back in the 80s. And of course, they're also celebrating it. And so there's a sort of fantastically sort of interesting. I mean, I was not into that band at all when we were touring. I wasn't really that keen on doing the tour because our sadly dear departed agent and friend, one of our closest friends, poor old Steve Strange, who passed away quite recently.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, Toby, you've got to do this not only are you going to play in front of huge audiences, but it's just so funny. And I went, I don't think it is funny, Steve. He goes, honestly, wait till you see it live. And he was right. I mean, I begrudgingly ignored the first gig and I sat in the dressing room and I wasn't prepared to go and watch it. I thought, no, I'm rising above this with my claret. I'm going to sit here with my claret and I'm going to be the better person, and I'm not going to be drawn into this.
I am not going to watch Rise of Skywalker. That's
exactly right. So, but of course, then everyone else has gone to watch it, and I'm like Billy No Mates in the in the dressing room on my own. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to go and look at this. And actually, as soon as I saw it play and I could sort of listen to it, and you just go, actually, this is like Monty Python, the rock and roll Monty Python. It's just so stupid. You can't take,
just the right amount of Benny Hill thrown in.
Oh, absolutely right.
I mean, I was like, because my friend is into it, and he's seen them live multiple times, and I hadn't, and I'm like, don't get it, dude. I can't do it. These lyrics I love the music. Don't get me wrong, love the music, but the lyric content, I'm like, this is no. Saw him live, saw everybody react to it, and I'm like, I get it.
Yeah, totally.
That's all it took. So how did this headline tour differ in any way? And there's obvious reasons, but how did it differ from the one you did in 2021? Besides, the different venues and no Dave, that was a big difference.
Yeah.
And then who opened up on those dates?
Well, in 2020, in the earlier tour.
Yeah, in 21. Right?
Oh God, we had a number of. We took out a band called Doomsday Outlaw, I think they were called.
Okay.
And we had two or three bands do various things. With Doomsday Outlaw toured with us quite a bit, actually. They're like another band that were on Frontiers, and nice guys. I've got nothing against them at all, but again, that was kind of almost like a strange, silly political move. They were label mates of ours, and when we got on with them, great. We by the time we'd all finished up, but I wouldn't, in all honesty, I perhaps wouldn't have chosen them if I had the choice.
Not the best fit for.
No, not really. I mean, nothing against, like I say, nothing against them at all.
Exactly.
But I'm a bit of a stickler for feeling that you've got to feel confident about, who you're playing with and all the rest of it. So yeah. I mean, I think the big difference is that we were mid-campaign. We were trying to kind of do something with a record in a very traditional sense. I mean, this is one of the big revelations to me, is that that kind of traditional model of how you make and tour a record is gone. It's not the same anymore.
Yep.
And it will continue to evolve and change, given the way that the world is at the moment, and the restrictions and all the rest of it. So there's a sort of sense of, in a way, I've had to change my perspective. I've had to go, because you've got to remember, I spent all of my formative years in a very successful touring rock and roll band with Little Angels, touring all over the world at a very high level. And so it was all tour buses and, all the usual things, so,
and including here in the States.
Yeah, exactly. So we were, I'm used to that cavalcade. I'm used to the lots of crew. I'm used to the big travel packages, etc. All the stuff that comes with it.
Right.
But when you're in a band like Wayward Sons, we're in the middle tiers. The venues are different. The way that everyone's looking at live playing in the UK and across Europe now is different. I mean, Brexit's caused a lot of problems. Yeah. So it's not as easy to get out there into Europe anymore, which is annoying and frustrating. But apart from that, the sort of environments are changing, so more festivals, less extensive touring, etc. So I think I was still stuck in the old world a little bit with that, expecting those things to work, even though the environment had changed and the way that people were looking at gigs had changed. And so the difference between that and this tour is that this tour, I made the right decision. I think that we'll just do a small amount of shows, condense it, make some real effort into making that show different from any other time that we've played. So when people see it, it's a real spectacle, and it was, and it definitely worked. And so I'm going to continue with that touring. I don't think you'll see Wayward Sons doing extensive touring in the same way that I used to do with Little Angels, for instance, ever again. I think what we'll do pockets of smaller amounts of shows. And obviously we're looking to try and get back into Europe and try and do whatever we can with the festivals, because that's the only way you can really break into Europe these days, is by doing a fly-in, fly-out with a major promoter, going to play a major festival until you can, unless you can pick up a support tour with a band. But that's difficult because it's expensive to do. I mean, the Steel Panther tour cost the band a lot of money to do it. We weren't buying on, but we had to support ourselves. We had to move around, so so there are a lot of challenges. There's no two ways about it going forward,
Yeah. It's I know one of the one of the festivals, and now here I am at my age. I'm like, yeah, I would love to go to Wacken, but I'm like, is that something you guys would look into?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I know Thomas Jensen, the guy who runs that festival, really well. He's a good friend of mine. It's a brilliant festival, but it's very much a heavy metal festival. So it's very much they're like the harder edge of everything. So it's always, I mean, Saxon have headlined it a load of times, but they have bands like Sodom and and all the sort of extreme metal stuff, a lot of screamcore, it's all that sort of stuff. So actually finding a place for a classic rock band is often quite difficult with Wacken. I mean, I did it with Dio's Disciples, and we did it with Fastway when I was in that band, those bands. But Thomas has always been slightly reluctant about putting Wayward Sons on, not because he doesn't like the band, he loves the band, but he said, I don't know where I could put you. I don't know how I can make you fit, because
that's okay. That's cool. I'm glad. Thanks for saying that, because I oftentimes there are things that happen throughout history. Let's just say Stars, when they did that song for the Relief all the way back. And, there's certain people that weren't on there that I know. And I'm like, what, did they not call you? Were you not interested? What was the deal? Because so many people were there that you're like, well, if they were there, why weren't you there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, often it's availability. It's often, who's around,
Correct.
That sort of stuff,
Yeah. And I think for us as the people who are sitting around going, oh, I love those guys. Oh my God, there's all those people are together. This is like the new movie. Have you seen The Greatest Night in Pop Music?
No, I haven't seen that. What is that?
Oh, dude. Oh, I'm glad I get to tell you about it, because you'll watch it tonight before you go to bed still. It's late there, but you're going to watch it. It's on Netflix. I don't know if you have that.
Yeah.
But it's all about the We Are the World project.
Oh, no, I have seen that. I have seen that advertised. I just haven't had a chance to look at it. I would be very interested in that, yeah.
And let me tell you, I'm about a third of the way through it. The only reason I stopped is so I could be ready for today. So I'm like, I got to get down and get on the computer and get my stuff ready. But I'd have watched the rest of it, because it really, I mean, it hooked me. It's one of those, Toby, where you're like, every bit of information that's coming through is I'm eating it. My brain is just soaking it in, going, holy shit, I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. You get the full story. Brilliant.
Yeah. And there's some great things all the way from, Lionel Richie, obviously, a very large part of that. So he's one of the main narrators of what is one of the main interviewed, but all the way to Bob Dylan, things that you'll learn about Bob Dylan on that.
Wonderful. So I'll check it out.
Yeah. It was so far really well done. I was sucked in. I was hooked. And then let's see. And like I say, what I want to do is move from Wayward Sons into what you've got going on. I have a bunch of stuff here, that I can put on screen to show and to get us in. But you know what was next? Do you know what was next to the Little Angels when I was pulling my stuff out?
What's that?
The Limelighters.
Oh.
Glenn Yarborough. Were you ever into Glenn Yarborough?
No.
Did you ever watch the animated Hobbit?
Oh, yes.
That's Glenn Yarborough singing all those songs throughout that movie.
No way. Really?
Yeah, with that amazing... we think Stevie Nicks has vibrato, or, but he's like the... Watch it again. Wow. You'll flip out. But,
well, weirdly, I was one of about 3 people that were at the cinema when that first animated Lord of the Rings movie. I think that's the one you're referring to.
Well, that was a different one. That's the one that came out after Ralph Bakshi did that. Which
that's great.
It is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's unfortunately it's like you take all those books and
oh goodness me. But as a curioso of someone attempting to do Lord of the Rings, like I say, I was one of 3 people that were in the cinema in Scarborough watching that. Me and my dad watched it because I was a massive Lord of the Rings fan, and I have a great memory of that. I mean, it was kind of like strange, but of course, I've been to New Zealand, I've been to Hobbiton, and I've gone around the Weta, studios, and I'm a massive fan of Peter Jackson. So it's different. But so what are you talking? What's the Hobbit thing? I don't know what I'm. I don't.
The
I,
Hobbit.
I
You know Rankin and Bass, right? They did Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. They did, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. All those Christmas programs. Year Without a Santa Claus, and then they did the animated ones, which is like 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, Frosty the Snowman. Then they did animated cartoons, which was like Thundercats, Tiger Sharks.
Yeah.
And there was what I can't think. What's the other one? I can't think of it now. Silverhawks. Silverhawks. That was it. So what they had done is they did like when they were doing all of those kind of things early on. They did The Hobbit, and it's an animated show, just an animated movie. I think it was made for television, and then came the Ralph Bakshi film.
Okay.
Then they didn't cover the Return of the King. So in that movie, then that's Rankin and Bass did a version of Return of the King. So they kind of are bookends on that Lord of the Rings by Ralph Bakshi.
Oh, mad. Well, I mean, I can't remember ever seeing that over here in the UK, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
We got Thundercats, we got those, but I can't remember ever seeing The Hobbit as a TV series. I don't think we got that over here.
Yeah, I love those. Anyway, Rankin and Bass is a huge thing, big favorite of mine. But Glenn Yarborough, when you can probably watch it here on YouTube or
check it out.
Some streaming thing, or I'll just order it and send it to you. But no, anyway, Glenn Yarborough, great singer, great writer. Anyway, but what I wanted to kind of get into is that what you did during that time to keep things flowing, to keep your let's say probably keep your sanity as a musician. You were surrounded, you have friends, you have all of these let's call them music associates even, who are like, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was tough. I mean, but what I've done, what has become and is now becoming a really big part of my life is I started to write a screenplay for a film.
Nice.
And it was in response to a really dear friend of mine, Lionel Hicks, who is a film producer in his own right, he's an independent film producer. We were chatting away one day, and this was before COVID, actually. I mean, this was a couple of years before COVID, but he turned to me one day, and I was actually writing some music potentially for a film that he was making, an independent children's film.
Oh, cool.
Me and Dave were co-writing it and co-writing the songs for it, and we spent quite a lot of time working on it. And randomly, weirdly, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, can you? But we just signed a contract with this company in Germany, who are really successful, very big film production company. They work with Warner Brothers, and we just signed a contract through Lionel to write the songs for this film that we were going to make, which was this kids movie. And it was the day before COVID hit. So when I got back from the Steel Panther tour, me and Dave were then working on stuff, and literally we woke up one morning after we'd literally electronically signed the contract, and this company called Pantaleon, they were called, they sent us an email saying, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have, we can't honor this contract. We're about to go into a lockdown in Germany, and we don't know whether our company's even going to survive. So it was like, oh my God, so it was terrible. So, but by this point, I'd had a conversation with Lionel where he said to me one day, he said, look, I was probably expoling some story about being on the road. And he said, you know what, you should write something. He said, you should use your experience and write a screenplay. You could write a movie. I think you could really do something. So I started messing around with a few ideas. Nothing was crystallizing, but and I kept talking to him about a few ideas. And then I hit upon this one particular idea, which was, what if a superstar rock and roller was actually a serial killer? And it was the perfect crime, because serial killers by definition usually don't stray from their patch very often. It's a thing that tends to happen. Very, very rarely do people get into that kind of thing. And sadly, they tend to sort of stay in one area, and that's how they end up getting caught, and they want to get caught and all this. I said, well, what if because I was finding it really dry. How do you write about the music business? It's a really dry, actually weirdly sort of boring sort of situation. It's a really kind of boring life, you know, outside of all the glitz and the glamour. The backstage, like the biggest myth in rock and roll, as we know, is backstage is the place to be. It's rubbish backstage. You've got a couple of curly cheese sandwiches and a you know, a couple of cans of flat Coca-Cola. You know, it's rubbish. You know, so how do you write about something that essentially, really, in its nuts and bolts, is pretty bland, actually, in the nuts and bolts of it? When you see stuff on stage, fantastic. But when you get back and you're traveling in a van or you're traveling in a bus or you're flying somewhere, actually, a lot of it's really tedious. And so, but that was the point. I said to Lionel, well, actually, that could be a really good subject, a way to sort of talk about the music business, talk about the stuff people don't really know, the backside of it, the dirty underbelly, the grubby under the fingernail stuff, you know.
The Jimmy Savile side.
Well, yes, sadly. So, you know, so I started thinking about this, and because I couldn't think of anything that was kind of could use the music business in a very pure sense, I decided I was going to center it on a thriller, on a thriller. And so I started to write this story about this superstar rock and roller who, for one reason or another, became a serial killer to exact revenge on people. So I wrote this 168-page script. I've never written one in my life, but it peeled out of me. I can't tell you, Stuart. It just peeled out of me. Now I was learning on the spot. I bought a load of Of course, I bought software for it, and I wrote this 168-page script and gave it to Lionel, and he went, "Oh my God, I didn't think you'd do that," sort of thing. So
you're like, "Well, you didn't know me as good as you thought."
Well, you did ask, you know. I was like, you know,
yeah, you did.
What can I do? You know,
it's on you.
I don't let you down, man. You know. So long story short, we sent some samples of the screenplay to a couple of people that he knew, and they all loved it and all went, "This is a great idea. It needs work, but we think we could do something with this. This could be a really interesting, exciting sort of, you know, thriller." So flash forward of two years, and flash forward a year, I would say, really. So through the pandemic, I concentrated a lot on working on developing myself as a screenwriter. So I read a load of books. I had a load of online conversations with other screenwriters. I started working with a guy called Rob Green, who helped me redevelop the script. The script's called The Belly of the Beast. That's the name of the film. And I worked with Rob to redevelop the story. And then eventually, when the pandemic started to sort of calm down and we were all getting back into normal life, I'd spent pretty much 2 years redeveloping this story, and we managed to get a director attached to it. So we've now got an English independent film director who's got a real track record. Called Simon Rumley. He's now attached to the film. We've now picked up a new producer in the last couple of months, a guy called Nick O'Hagan, who works with Jeremy Thomas, who's one of the most successful British film producers of all time. They're now on board, and it looks like the film's going to get made this year.
Wow.
So, but now it's changed, it's morphed. And what's been amazing about it is that whilst I've been sort of wrestling with what I'm going to do with music, screenwriting's taken over a little bit. So I've now got 4 feature films that I've written.
Wow.
And 2 short films. Belly of the Beast is the first film I've written. That's going into production. And I've now literally, only just before Christmas, I was hired as a professional screenwriter for an Australian company to write an action thriller for an American company that are making it in Australia. So I am now officially a professional screenwriter.
Add that, put it on there. Dang.
So that aside from the songwriting, and actually what's been great about it is it's re-enlivened my songwriting, because it's just another avenue. Because actually I realized that writing screenplays is very similar to writing songs. You're telling stories.
Right.
And I realized about myself that, you know, just like you mentioned earlier on about yourself, everything for me is about the lyrics. It's the story you tell in the song. And so really the transition from being a songwriter into a screenwriter hasn't been that complicated.
That's another thing that excited me about your set list. You had 19 songs on the set list, and one of my favorite story songs of yours is from the first record, Be Still. I just love, I love singing that song. I love listening to that song. You know, it's just, I would love to play that song, but it's a great little piece of life from this character who, you know, goes through these different, hates his frickin' boss, meets a woman, has a quick thing with her, then is hanging out with the boys, having drinks, you know, and then it's about the end of it is like, I'd rather sleep the gutters and, you know.
No, exactly. And I think I've always been influenced heavily by the greatest lyricists of all time, you know, and Bob Dylan being one of the key ones for me. And I think, you know, Paul McCartney is an incredill lyricist. Elton John, Bernie Taupin.
Oh yeah, Bernie Taupin.
But I think actually Phil Lynott is my absolute lyrical hero, as is Elvis Costello. I think so. I've sort of tried to sort of and actually weird. I mean, you know, and I don't think he's ever really held up as a great lyricist, but I think David Bowie's a fantastic lyricist. When you get into his work and you study his work, it's incredible flights of fancy, incredible perspectives. You know, staggeringly interesting use of language. You know, and so between David Bowie, Phil Lynott, and Elvis Costello, with a little bit of Bob Dylan, they're all my, and definitely a little bit of Taupin. Those 5 people have enormously influenced me above everybody else, and they're all great storytellers. I mean, you look at Lynott. I mean, Lynott is you know, such a great conversationalist storyteller.
Yes.
It's not. You don't get ooh baby from Phil Lynott. You get a story about him as a black man growing up in Catholic, you know, a Catholic area of Ireland, you know, and how all the struggles with a white mum, you know, and a black dad, you know, and how that all played out through his life, and what that influence was, and how he then used his experiences, and that all goes into the songs, and that's what I love. It's so important to tell your truth, you know, to tell yourself, and so you've got to get that in, and you know, it's so true what they say. You cannot write anything with any real authenticity, without any real authority, without knowing it firsthand. You can't pretend to be something,
right?
You know,
right? Unless you're really, you know, the only thing that can really help you through that is if you have developed a writing skill that allows you to write within metaphor, or
of course. But I mean, I think you know, I read a great thing that Stephen King's one of my favorite writers, and I love his work, and you know, he says, you know, you only need to experience one thing for it to inform you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So you can, you know, Stephen King. What I'm saying is that all of his characters that he inhabits have all got a piece of him in them.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter whether they're a boogeyman who lives in a gutter, or they're a guy that wanders the deserts and, you know, of Texas, you know, trying to build a new society based on whatever. It doesn't matter what those characters are, because there's a piece of him in them, and he channels that piece, and he channels those experiences through life. And that's what you do. You know, that, you know, there's no reason why I couldn't write a science fiction film, as long as the characters have some essence of what I understand about my life in that character. And so that's the key choice. And that's the same thing with songwriting. You know, you have to channel your own experiences. You know?
Absolutely. I you know, there's often that thought about, I just mentioned it too, I think in when I was talking with Chips and Up last week, where it's, you know, or maybe I was just talking to somebody about it, when, you know, here were all these bands in the 80s that were these skinny, fighting, trying to make it, some of them, like Reb Beach talks about, trying to scrape up enough money to get McDonald's for dinner.
Oh yeah.
You know, and he's looking under the rug for any spare change, right?
Yeah.
And then once they get everything, now you're like, well, what do you write about now?
Exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, you've got to. I mean, a very smart publisher of mine, first publishing deal I ever had when I was a young lad, when we first got a record deal with Polydor. We got a publishing deal with Polygram Music, and the guy that ran that at the time was Lucian Grange, who now is the biggest name in the music industry in the world.
Wow.
And Lucian was a very, very smart man, and I can remember him talking me into doing co-writes, you know, and I was like, no, I'm not doing any co-writes. I know what I'm doing. And he says, well, look, you don't know what you're doing, because you're 22 years old. and you haven't had enough life experience. But what you can do is you can work with other people to help you understand and unlock yourself and start to get some different perspectives. So that's what we did, you know. And I remember the A&R lady at the time that we had was fantastic. A lady called Susan Collins, very smart woman. I didn't think she was at the time. I thought she was an interfering cow, frankly, but she really wasn't. She was amazing. And I now sort of like really wish I could go back to that 23-year-old and just apologize to her, frankly.
Yeah, right.
But you know, I made a lot of mistakes. But she said to me, you know, one day I was sat behind it. I was all grumpy, you know, sat behind her desk because she was like telling me what I ought to be doing, and she's giving me some, you know, appraisals of the songs and the demos I've created and all this. And she said, the thing is with it, Toby, he says, you know, she's that exact phrase. She says, you can experience, if you experience heartache and heartbreak of somebody that you really care about when you're a young person, and they break your heart, that will inform you on so many levels for the rest of your life. It's just about holding on to that feeling and understanding the nuances and understanding the trails within it and how those things affected you and how you can tap that. And even though I didn't want to admit it to her, it made total sense to me. And I probably stormed out of that, you know, boardroom thinking, what the hell does she know? But of course she knew everything. And that's always stuck with me, is that you can always return back to that feelings, those feelings of heartbreak, or those feelings of joy, or those feelings of ecstasy, or those feelings of fear and revulsion, and you can draw upon them every single time, and they will always be different because it's about the feeling. It's about the feeling.
Absolutely. And I think about that a lot when I'm, you know, when there's times where I'm like, oh, I could write about this, and then you're like, oh, and I'll start writing something, and I'm like, wow, that's cheesy. That's really not what I thought we were gonna. That's not, you know, there's times, me being such a heavy listener, that sometimes I'm listening to a song and I think of lyrics that, oh, this is making me feel this, and I think of lyrics, but
Yeah.
rarely do I write them down. I need to start at some point.
You've got to push through that, man. You got to push through that, because that's just what we call that the cheese wall. It's the cheese wall. Once you've nibbled your way through the cheese wall, I promise you'll get to the crackers beyond.
And I love cheese.
Hey, man, who doesn't love cheese? You have to be mad not to love cheese.
Amen. Right? In fact, I just opened up my new cheese shredder.
Wow. Okay.
Yesterday, I just got a new cheese shredder. I'm pretty happy about that. We probably should wrap up here. And you want to just wrap up at the top of the hour? That's about 18 minutes.
That's all. That's good. We can do that.
I mean, I
just don't want to bore anyone to death, you know.
Oh, well, it's not boring me to death. I mean, I'm the one that runs the show, so you know. But you know, they dig on it. It's all good. I mean, what I also wanted to do was, I have this new shirt. I will show everybody my new shirt. This is based on "Do You Want to Riot," which is a track that is from "Don't Pray for Me" by Little Angels. And look at this. I even have a little EP that was released back then.
Oh wow, like a sampler.
Not only that, I've got two.
Oh my goodness me! And you got quite a good Liverpoolian accent. Accent there, mate.
I'm a bloody hoarder. Yeah, you know what, dude? I will say one thing before I step into this. Holy cow! Your albums, even on CD, they're not easy to find sometimes, but they're expensive if you want to get them.
Oh, I know. And it's a source of great frustration to us, because we don't own the rights to the masters. You know, Little Angels, so many bands, sadly, before us, and probably are happening now and will have to happen afterwards, gave all the rights away to the record label. And because we've never recouped the money that we owe them, they hold on to the masters. And so we have no choice or any say in whether those records are re-released or repackaged. And it's a great source of frustration, because they haven't been re-released as records. Somebody licensed them about maybe 15 years ago. Cherry, I think they were called Cherry Red or Lemon.
Yeah.
They licensed them and they put them out for a short period of time, and then they disappeared again. Now, we had nothing to do with that. That's not because they just borrowed. They just paid for the license. You know.
Yeah.
We are, as a band. I mean, here's the thing: Little Angels are considering doing some shows next year. as a reformation, maybe a short run of shows. And one of the things that we will absolutely be doing is talking to Universal about reissuing the albums.
That'd be great.
It's been too long
Yeah.
that they haven't been available. And I get a message every couple of days from someone saying, "Oh, do you know where I can get a copy of the album? Do you know where I can get a copy?" And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but we can't do anything about that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you what, it's the same way with Wayward Sons.
No, same thing, same problem. Because you know the labels, they do runs, they do print runs, and I know the weird thing about Wayward Sons is we sold a lot of records, and they weren't, because it was an independent label, they weren't shipping tens of thousands, they were shipping thousands, you know. So we've done really well with the sales. So, but of course, you know, the trouble with the independent labels is that once they've done their course with an album campaign, they don't produce anymore.
Wow.
You know.
See, I'm hoping somewhere in a warehouse they have one more box of Ghosts, because that's the only vinyl I don't have.
Mate, I tell you, the amount of times I get people asking me that. I mean, we could. I mean, here's the thing: we have to buy stock from the record label ourselves. So if we went back to Frontiers and said, look, we want to put some more vinyl out of Ghosts Are Yet to Come, they'd charge us probably 20 quid an album to produce them. So it's so costly, it's almost impossible, you know. So
I'll pay 25 quid, and anybody else out there, think about it. We'll just all send you our money. You could do a pre-order and then just give them the money and go, here, just.
Mate, I'll tell you, one thing I'm thinking of doing really is that we're going to try and restructure everything and try and get the rights back to the music from Frontiers from a new label. So if we can do that, then we will probably put out a box set or something, or re-release everything again. Do you know what? It's a game, Stuart. It's a game.
Yeah.
When you're in that independent middle tier like we are, you have so little power, so little control. It's almost impossible, because they just simply don't have the wherewithal to sell a record correctly on a global scale. They do what they can. I'm not nothing against them. They do what they can, but they don't have the budgets. They don't have the distribution. They don't have that burning desire. They don't have an office in every, like, you know, Universal's got an office in every major city in, you know, across the world, you know, that needs, you know, so they've got a presence everywhere. But of course, if you're an independent little label from Italy, you have a presence in Italy and maybe one in London or something,
and then one like in Nashville,
and one in Nashville, which I don't even think is open anymore.
Yeah, I was wondering if it moved or if they have it or what.
I think they closed it.
Oh boy! Wow.
Yeah, hard to know. It's, you know, you don't really get the full story, because they're operating on tiny margins. You know, they're trying to keep everything going, and you know, I've got nothing but praise for what they did for us at the early years of the band's career. But now it's the wrong label for us. You know.
Yeah. So you'd probably be moving to something else. I do want to ask you about that before we go, but I want to make sure that I mention this. So I have my shirt on, which is indicative of Do You Want to Riot from Don't Pray For Me. And it came with this.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about this series? Because it's brand new stuff. You have another one as well. And I just want to, I myself, you know, with all the different things that I'm looking at, I would love to know more about this.
Okay. Well, it was, one of the things that I did in the tail end of the second lockdown in the UK is I put together a book, which was called Sticks and Stones. Well, that's the series of that's the spoken word book. But I did an actual hard, like a proper book. It was a volume. It was My Life in Words, or you know, my life. And essentially, what it did was it explained, through the use of the songs that I've written through my career, aspects of my journey through life. So rather than it just being a dry biography, I used the songs that I'd written to illustrate what I was doing and how I felt at the time I wrote those songs, and how it impacted on me and what happened next. And the book did great. We sold loads of it, and it was a fantastic success, and I was really chuffed by it. And I was sat with my business partner Rob, and we were just chatting away about it, and he said, well, look, I think what we could do is, why don't you do a spoken word version of it? And I thought, actually, that's great, because one of the things that me and Ket did when we were traveling the world is we spent a lot of time listening to podcasts and listening to a lot of talking books, and they're fantastically involving. And because words are different written down from they are when they're spoken, I felt it was important that I put that slant on it. So I went back into the files that we did for the book, and I started re-examining them, and I changed them, and I re-evaluated it a little bit, and I just decided to release this CD that you've got in front of you as a way of bringing life to the words, because I think they do. I think when you speak words, they feel different from when you read them.
That's interesting. Yes, that was something I was thinking about bringing to the show. So
yeah. So there you go. So it's been really good. You know, we had a really good reaction from it, and it's available, continually available. And that's one great thing about doing it as a cottage industry. I can just press as many records of my records as I need.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, because I was really excited to see it, really excited to get it. And then, you know, you've had other things that you've done as well. I mean, you've been having in the past, you've already had a stream of your own solo albums as well throughout your career.
Yeah.
And then to see these, to also have the Kitchen Busker, those were brilliant shows during that time frame. I know I was a part of that with a lot of other people being viewers and appreciators of that. You know?
No, that was great. And it was, listen, it did me as much good as it did the audience, you know. And it just gave me a purpose, you know, every week, you know, because it was months and months and months of lockdown, wasn't it? And it was like every single week I knew that on the Thursdays I had to prepare a new show. So I spent all of the week preparing for the show. Then the night of the show, it felt like I was doing a gig, you know, and it was real. You know, we started, you know, me and Ket, we got right into the production value of it. You know, we were putting loads of stuff up, and I was making stuff, and it was just great fun. And you know, so it really saved my life, really. And I think it helped me as much as it helped everybody else, me doing it. So that was really cool. But no, I've got a healthy. I tell you one thing I've realized about myself, Stu, is that this has happened in very recent months, because I turned a bit of a corner with it all just before Christmas, and I sort of felt a real enlightenment. I thought, you know, hey, hang on, I know what's going on here. You know, is that I'm not great when I've got just one thing to focus on. I need a lot of things. I need a number of projects to sort of bounce between, and each one feeds each other. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. And so I have to keep doing my solo stuff. In fact, I'm going in the studio in March to record my first solo record for 20 years.
Wow.
So I've got pretty much written most of the material. Very excited about it. So I'm going to go and make a solo record. So this year is going to be about me touring as a solo artist in the UK, putting out a brand new solo album. Although I think I might release it in 3 chunks. I think we're going to do it in 3 4-track EPs. I think I'm going to do that, gather it together as a kind of collection.
Yeah.
And that's this year it's going to be about that, and then next year it's going to be about returning to Wayward Sons.
That's great. Well, you know, I'm going to retire from my regular thing next year. So
cool.
I'll be ready to work with you guys.
Mate, hey.
I laugh, but I'm serious.
Hey, you get yourself over here, Paul.
You know, I'm ready. Now, one last thing too, I do want to ask you about, you know, about kind of promotions, things about the band, things about getting the word out there. A brilliant radio station there in the UK, out of the UK, is Planet Rock.
Yeah.
I know that you guys have had a lot of, I don't know, what do I want to say? Support from them. And I know that they have given a lot of support to a lot of bands that normally you wouldn't hear about.
Absolutely. And you know that I'm a presenter on Planet Rock now.
Yes.
So I do that on a weekly basis. In fact, I've got to write and record my show tomorrow. So
cool.
They're brilliant. I mean, they're great. You know, I mean, my show numbers have been going up, which has been fantastic. And there's a huge audience out there. For the appetite for rock and roll is not diminished.
No.
In fact, if anything, it's getting bigger. So, they're amazing. And they're a fantastic bunch of people. And they couldn't have been more of a support for Wayward Sons. I think in terms of how people find out about the band, because we're not with a major label, it is about searching for it, really. And, you know, because there's only so much we can do, you know. I mean, the algorithms on Facebook are famously closing everything down. There's a moment you mentioned selling anything on Facebook these days, it closes the algorithm, so it's very difficult to sort of get that organic reach, you know.
Right.
But we are reaching a point with the band where, you know, we've got plenty of supporters, and it's gathered momentum. So it's more about I think there's I think the thing is there is a great community of rock fans out there, you know, that find what they want to find and like what they want to like, and the loyalty is absolute. And so really it's about expanding that for us. It's about expanding that network of people. And do you know what? The greatest way of doing that is through the grapevine. It's people finding it and telling their friends and coming to a show and passing music around and enjoying it, just like we used to do with the bootlegs, and just like we used to do when we taped music off the radio back in the day.
Yes,
right. That's the way it works. And
yeah, I remember telling the family, "Shh, I'm recording. Hold on."
Oh, I know exactly.
They were like, "God, shut up!" I'm just like, "No, you shut up for just a minute. Give me 3 minutes and 50 seconds, and I'll be done." Just you know, I've been dying to get this song, and here it is.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, you know, it is you know, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I do think there is a great sort of like grapevine out there that's become a bit, it's underground. I think rock and roll's gone underground a little bit in a way, and I think that's kind of actually very healthy, because it just means that it re-solidifies in its foundations, you know.
Yeah. Now, when you're, I think one of the great things too about the members in the band, I just would love for you to reflect a little bit on Sam's involvement with your friend Ricky Warwick when you guys were on your trip and he got to do a little touring with him.
Yeah, no, listen, Sam's so talented and such a kind of musically flexible character that he deserves to be out there playing as much as he possibly can. And Wayward Sons is a great project, and we will always do it. And I think it's his number one love. But when we're not doing stuff, he deserves to be out there playing, and he's getting a real reputation. He's played with Ricky Warwick, and he's played with Black Star Riders. He did a gig with Saxon. You know, he's playing with a number of people, and he works with a guy called Ollie Brown, which is another contemporary artist, sort of like a hard rock, so alt rock thing over here, which is gathering a bit of momentum. So, you know, Sam's one of those guys that kind of, he can fit in and he can find his place, and that's a real talent. And I am the first. I mean, I suggested him to Black Star Riders. I said to their manager, "Look, you should use Sam, because it's right up his strata. You know, he knows exactly what he's doing. You know."
And you know, Black Star Riders is one of those bands that you're like that. Like so many, we're going to say it a million times, but like so many other bands, you're like, this needs to be a household name as far as we rock and rollers are concerned. I'm not saying our mom's got to know, you know, everybody's mom's got to know it. That's not going to happen, but it didn't happen back then. It's not going to happen now. But among rock and rollers, Black Star Riders just needs to be right there on the palette. You just need to be saying those words along with these other bands that are out, Wayward Sons, Black Star Riders, you know, what, you know,
it's the same problem that we're all in at the moment, whereas like Black Star Riders and Wayward Sons 25 years ago would have got a record deal, and we would have had a major record deal, and we'd have had all that promotion like Little Angels did, like the Almighty did, which is the band obviously that Warwick started out in. We were both on Polydor, and we both had that massive spend and that massive promotion. And that's what got us our success, you know. But we're not in that position anymore. There aren't those labels. There isn't a single major label out there that wants to sign a rock band right now. There's an absolute dearth of it. Nothing's getting signed. But I think that will change. I do think that, you know, I mean, what always gets me about it is that if people say to you, or say to me, "Oh, rock and roll's dead," you know, no one fucking listens to it anymore. I'm like, what are the 2 or 3 biggest bands in the world? Name them. And I'd go, and I'd say, you'd be hard pressed not to say the Foo Fighters,
right?
And you'd be hard pressed not to say Coldplay. And all right, I'm not a massive Coldplay fan, but they are a guitar band, you know. And the other one is Metallica. I mean, you know, these are the
Five
big
Finger
bands,
Death Punch.
these are the biggest bands in the world that play multiple stadiums. You're saying people don't like rock and roll anymore? It's just a smokescreen.
Yep, it is. It really is. Because here's my thing too. Like Gene Simmons even said that, and I'm like, Gene, come on. You know, I get what you're doing. You're going to say this. It's going to get everybody's going to go, well, Gene Simmons said, and you're like, you know, just don't, because it's not true. You know, it's not true. Otherwise, Kiss would have been done a long time ago.
Exactly.
And nobody would have shown up for this last tour.
Oh, it's a last tour, is it? Is it a last tour?
Yeah.
Oh, allegedly.
Yeah, now they're thinking about doing the Avatar thing like ABBA.
And I would say that watch out, and I swear to God, this isn't the last you're going to see a Kiss, because what was the contract they had? It was the contract for having the makeup on.
Right.
So if the makeup comes off,
yeah,
I wouldn't be at all surprised if we didn't see a Kiss without the makeup tour.
I mean, normally I wear makeup and I don't have any on today. One of my favorite lines.
I'm a massive fan.
From Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg. Is that mascara? I'm in a band. Can we just get back to the copier? Stop sticking a pen in it. It's easy 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's amazing to me what, you know, people are going to say stuff like that because they know that there's rock and rollers by the millions.
Yeah, of course.
Who are going to react, and you're like, don't.
It's not his world, isn't it? It's not his world anymore.
Right.
It's not his world. So, you know, a man in his 70s who's been in one of the biggest rock and roll bands of all time, who's done everything, seen everything.
Television, movies.
All he's seeing is changes that he can't comprehend because it's not what he's used to. And so to him, that's the death of rock and roll. But of course it isn't. It's just evolving into something else.
Right. And like you've always said, the one line I take away from you, which I'm sure you're going to use this in a book sometime, is standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, as long as people respectfully make their way up under those shoulders and are really influenced and passionate about it, great other things are going to be happening.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. And, you know, one generation feeds another.
Absolutely.
It then changes, and then we move around, and then you know what you know, and what always gets me and makes me chuckle is that what comes around goes around. You know, the more it changes, it more it stays the same. These are all cliches, but they're absolutely true. You know,
totally, absolutely. You know. That's why they're in songs. That's why Cinderella has a song called "The More Things Change."
Yeah, exactly.
That's why they did that. You know, and there's I was thinking about bands. Shoot, I hate that. I do that a lot, where it's like, oh, there's an idea. I was
write it down, Stuart.
I know what it is. I'm just so thrilled to be talking to you. No, that's not it. Well, I am thrilled to be. But the thing about it is there's bands like and artists like Joe Jackson, like Aerosmith. You want to think about we want to sit. Sometimes people want to say rock is dead, but you're like, you know, you could say the same thing about swing music. You could say the same thing about big band music, but it wasn't dead when Aerosmith did it on 10-inch record. Swing music wasn't dead when freaking Joe Jackson, a brilliant artist, does 2 albums, and A&M Records let him do these 2 swing albums.
Yeah,
I'm like, what were they thinking? They're brilliant, great records. But all as far as what was happening in the music industry and how you had a hit with that. Let's keep pumping those out. But here he goes and does 2 swing records. So everything, like you said, is cyclical. It just comes. It'll come back around, and it'll, you know,
it will.
They'll figure out a way to do it,
and it'll be a slightly different flavor, and it'll have a different sort of approach, and that's what makes it great.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, there is so many other things that we could chat about, but I mean, I need to let you get rolling. I've got to get going. Guess who I'm seeing tonight? Did I tell you?
You did.
Glenn Hughes.
Oh, Glenn. Okay, yeah, he's a good lad.
Do you know Glenn?
I know Glenn. Yeah, he's a good lad. I've played with him, and we haven't become great buddies, but whenever we see each other, he's always a pat on the back and how you doing and all that. So he's a good lad. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. I met up with him out at the NAMM show, probably in 2009, probably. It was kind of weird. I was with Mili Matijevic from Steelheart, and the doors open. We went to the wrong floor, and the doors open on the elevator, and here's Glenn. And we're like, oh, hi.
Yeah, he's a good lad. He's a kind of, I don't know, he's like a maverick character that sort of is still around and still making great music, and no signs whatsoever of stopping, and long may it last,
Yeah, sings like a beast. I mean, I'm one of those guys who could sing anything, R&B to metal to whatever.
Absolutely.
When you hear it, it's amazing. So everybody, do check out these records, the Wayward Sons albums. You can pick those up. You can also check them out on streaming services. They're out there. Yeah. Toby, check out the websites. I've got some of those links down below. You can check out stuff about Little Angels. All the Little Angels guys doing good?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, everyone's okay. Like I say, we're talking at the moment. So watch this space. You never know what's going to happen.
That's awesome. Yeah, check out the Little Angels page. I've got that out there linked. And then check on some of the merch that's available for Wayward Sons, and also for the things Toby's got going. And listen to Planet Rock. Check it out as well. Some amazing stuff. My brother, thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much for indulging me.
What a pleasure. And I'm going to say the same right back to you, man. Tell your lovely wife hello. And
I will.
And then we are talking about coming over there again, because, the last time you guys were playing Download right after the COVID thing happened, and that all got shut down. So we didn't get to come. We had plans to come over, plane tickets, and then we had to cancel everything. So,
okay.
So
I mean, when you're coming over, you're most welcome.
That'd be awesome, my friend. Well, that's cool. Everybody out there, thank you for joining in. Miss So, just a great time today, man. I look forward to having you back. Thanks for bringing the wine, brother. We'll have to share some when I get over there.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
All right. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good one. Remember, when you walk out your door, you're in everybody else's world. They're not in yours. So keep that in mind. Take it easy, guys. Toby, hang tight with me for a second. I'll be right here.